All right, guys, real quick, just going to use this opportunity to shill my other platforms. You can find all my links on my Linktree page. The main pages I'm going to be using other than YouTube are going to be Minds, Odyssey, BitChute, Rumble, and Truth Social. So if you guys want to give me a follow over on those other platforms, I'd really appreciate it. But without further ado, let's get into the video. All right, guys. All right. What a game, as you see in the thumbnail. That was one of probably the best Eagles games I've seen in quite a while. The Eagles have won it 29-21. Of course, I'm talking about the Jacksonville Jaguars at the Philadelphia Eagles. The mighty return of Doug Peterson to the Linc. And I'm very glad, I'll just say right up front, that the Eagles fans did not boo him. I know that we're notorious for this when players or coaches leave. But Doug Peterson deserves the utmost respect. They actually did show that in the stadium, that he did win the 2017 Super Bowl. So I'm very glad that they did not boo our Super Bowl head coach. But that being said, guys, we'll get right into the game. This was one of those games where I was a little nervous at first, quite nervous actually, because in my opinion, Doug Peterson has a very talented Jaguars team. And so I knew going into this game that it wasn't going to just be an easy win. And it looked that way at first, guys. It was 14-0 like that. There was a pick six from Jalen Hurts. I thought it was initially not his fault, but, you know, the Jaguars defense, I give them all the credit because that guy just kind of scooped in there and got it. So it was 7-0 like that, and then the Jaguars got another touchdown right after that. And so it was 14-0, guys, 14-0. Very similar feeling as an Eagles fan in the past couple of years is watching them just fall behind early. But this was the big difference, guys. And this, again, just reminded me of the Carson Wentz era. I don't mean to talk so much trash about Wentz all the time, but honestly, if Wentz was the quarterback, I don't feel like we win this game because this would always happen. This was a theme of the Eagles in, 2018, 2019, 2020 is that they would just fall below in the early game, and then they would kind of have a resurgence, but most of the time they just would never quite get it done and ended up holding the L at the end of the day. But this was much different, guys. As you know, watching this game, the Eagles really buckled it down. There was a Jalen Hurts rushing touchdown, followed by a Miles Sanders touchdown, followed by my man, Kenneth Gainwell, as I say. I love that guy. I'm glad he finally got a touchdown, at least. I don't know if he got one in previous years. Like I said, I didn't really watch the Eagles, but he got one this year, and it was good to see. Also on the defensive side, Hassan Riddick showing his value very heavily on this team. Really, overall, it's hard for me to talk specifically about the defense in individual players because I think overall they're just an elite unit at this point. But, Jordan Davis had great sack. They were all over Trevor Lawrence. And in a way, like, there is a huge caveat here. In a way that this did remind me of the 2013 snow game. Because if I remember that game correctly, the Eagles were kind of down in that one, and then eventually they won, thanks largely to LaShawn McCoy. But that game was categorized mostly by its severe weather conditions. And in this case, I actually think the weather played quite a bit of a role. On the Eagles side, and especially on the Jaguars side. The Jaguars, I think, had 3 turnovers, I want to say. That was a big reason why the Eagles won. I think there was like 2 snaps where Trevor Lawrence just dropped the ball. And so the weather had a huge impact on this game, and especially also with Jalen Hurts. I feel like a lot of his passes, I counted 3 that were like really off the mark and would have been huge plays, but the ball was probably slipping, players were catching it, dropping it. That was happening on both sides. And so this really was more about how do you win despite the weather, and that is even more impressive in my opinion for this win from the Eagles because not only were they able to beat a very tough, in my opinion, Jacksonville Jaguars team. I think the Jags are probably going to be one of the better teams in the NFL this year. I don't know where to rank them now because they're 2-2, so they're like right down the middle. But Doug Peterson is no joke of a coach. He, like I said, he won the Super Bowl, as you guys all know, for the Eagles in 2017. But I think beating the Jaguars in this fashion with the weather, the only way to make this win more impressive, in my opinion, would be if it was in Jacksonville. But regardless, they got it done at the Linc, and very pleasing to watch. So yeah, the return of Doug Peterson, unfortunately for him, was not successful as far as his team goes winning. But the Eagles got it done, guys. I'm I know I'm kind of going on about this, but this was probably the most impressive win of the season for me personally, because this, in my opinion, was the true test. I thought the Vikings was also going to be a true test, and that was also a really good win. But this one for me, hands down so far, is the best win the Eagles have. And they're 4-0, guys, 4-0. That is a good start. I always like to say that you can really see where a team is headed after the first 4 weeks. So the Eagles being 4-0 is a very good sign. Now, obviously, it's better to start out bad and finish strong than the opposite. So there's always that risk with the NFL where your team can start off strong. They could win like 9 games and then lose like 6 or 7 in a row. That's always possible. But as far as this goes, it's a very good. And just to take a quick detour here, actually, the Eagles' schedule coming up it's not difficult. I said at the beginning of the season, I didn't actually make videos about this, but I did predict that the Eagles had one of the easier schedules in the NFL. And honestly, I would have picked the Jaguars to be an easy team before what happened this year because I just didn't know. But we got the Cardinals next at the Cardinals. I think that's going to be pretty winnable. The Cowboys, they're starting to pick it up. So I actually don't know with the Cowboys now. They have a new quarterback, and you know how the Cowboys go. Every time they get a new quarterback, they seem to replace the old one. This happened with Tony Romo when Dak Prescott came in, as the quarterback gets injured and then the new one does better. So I don't really know with the Cowboys. I believe they beat the Commies today. I'll have to look that up real quick. Yeah, so it looks like the Cowboys beat the Commies 25-10. So yeah, again, what a dud Carson Wentz is. I mean, I'm not going to get into that, but this is highly predictable. And the Cowboys, they are surprisingly better than I thought. And that's that. I mean, again, I was predicting based off Dak Prescott. I still think the Cowboys are a mediocre team with Dak Prescott, but again, when they got these new quarterbacks, so that's going to be a challenge anyway. And they're coming to Philadelphia, so that'll be a fun game. Then we got the Steelers, which I think that's another game very winnable. Texans, complete garbage, totally winnable. That could be a trap game though. There's always a risk with games like that. And then we got the Commies, we got the Colts, we got the Packers, Titans, Giants, Bears, and Cowboys. So really, all of these games are winnable, guys. That's the thing about this schedule. The Eagles have very winnable games this year, and if you can just get into the playoffs, they might be one of the better teams in the NFC at this point. So it's very good signs in that front because they have a very manageable schedule. A lot of good home games. The Packers are at Philadelphia, the Titans are at Philadelphia. So all the games that are like really tough, in my opinion, are going to be at home. And then the ones that are kind of like easy, like the Bears, it's like we go to the Bears, big deal. We go to the Texans, big deal. So, but yeah, just to get back to the defensive front, the pick from James Bradberry was probably one of the best picks I've ever seen. I mean, it was absolutely beautiful. He reached in and just snatched that sucker right up. And that was really the turning point in the game. That was almost like, in many ways, the game-winning play, I guess you could say. I didn't really like the Eagles' decision making on the field goal, how they took the points off and then tried to get the touchdown and then ended up kicking it again. Me personally, I just didn't like that decision, but the James Bradberry interception was absolutely fantastic. And then, like I said, it's hard for me to talk too heavily about individual players on the Eagles, but if I had to give it for this game, I would say Hassan Riddick and James Bradberry were probably the MVPs on defense. They were just absolutely fantastic, but this unit is so elite at this point. I mean, I just love watching this defense. The coordinator isn't the best. Everybody complains about Gannon, but it's like this defense is so good that even despite our coordinator, we're probably still going to be pretty elite in that area. And so, yeah, that's kind of all I have to say, guys. It was a very good win from the Eagles. 4-0. I'm very pleased with what this team is doing. I'm starting again. My original criticism of Hurts stands where he very well could get injured. That's always the risk in the NFL. And quarterbacks like Jalen Hurts, while they bring a lot of dynamic options to a team, and it's very hard to plan defensively for opposing teams against a running quarterback that can also throw, there is always a much higher risk that player will get injured. And keep in mind, guys, one of my favorite NFL players of all time is Michael Vick. In fact, he is the first player in the NFL that actually made me like football. And then when he came to the Eagles, that was kind of when I became like a really big Eagles fan. Like I always kind of followed the Eagles in like late 2009 era, but I didn't really start watching the Eagles heavily until about 2012, and that was Michael Vick. So I'm not saying that I hate running quarterbacks. Me personally, just what I know, I would rather have a pocket quarterback. But, you know, I recognize what throwing quarterback or running quarterbacks can do. They can give you that dynamic offense, which we saw that today. You know, you hand it off to Sanders and they don't know, do we go after Sanders or do we go after Jalen Hurts? So overall, it was just a great offensive performance. I mean, you had A.J. Brown showing up again. Devontae Smith had a catch. Dallas Goedert looked good. Miles Sanders, as always, was the workhorse. Like I said, my man Kenneth Gainwell got a touchdown. And this was all in the absence of Boston Scott as well, who's the Eagles' #2 running back, I believe, is what he's listed as. So, and Avonte Maddox was also out. That's something to also consider on the defensive side, is that Avonte Maddox was out and they still looked this good. So, yeah, these are all good signs, guys. All good signs. So, anyway, that is the video. Let me know what you guys thought about this Eagles team and what you think they're capable of in the future. As always, if you guys can please like this, it really helps the algorithm. And then also, if you are new, go ahead and consider subscribing. But really the most important thing here is that if you have not followed me on these alternate platforms and or created your own account on these alternate platforms, please go do so. As I rant and rave all the time now, YouTube, in my opinion, is a sinking ship, and it's slowly becoming less of an opinion and an actual fact. YouTube really doesn't like small or middle of the ground content creators, especially if they're political. They're gearing more towards the legacy media side. So in my opinion, I think YouTube's just going to end up becoming like another TV station. So you want to get on ththose new platforms now. Like I said, I'm already on there. So if you want to follow me over there, I would appreciate it very much. And as always, guys, this has been Jigsaw0097. Fly, Eagles, fly. I'll talk to you all later.